a fiery horse with the speed of light, a cloud of dust and a hearty hi-yo silver. Return with us now to those thrilling days of yesteryear. The Lone Ranger rides again. Join us as Johnnie Torch revisits 1981's infamous Legend of the Lone Ranger. After the success of Richard Donner's Superman in 1978, it was only a matter of time before Hollywood would take their chance on another popular 30s piece of Americana. The Lone Ranger seemed made to order for the task. So what went wrong? The film famously bombed, making $12 million against an $18 million budget. One of the contributing factors was the producers suing the original series actor Clayton Moore, forbidding him from doing appearances dressed as the Lone Ranger. This didn't sit well with fans, and they stayed away in droves. I actually remember the big controversy, and I was just little at the time. Moore eventually won the case, but this left the Lone Ranger in the dust for decades until Armie Hammer and Johnny Depp's film version, which was also received with decidedly mixed reactions. The film did spawn some Lone Ranger merchandise that I had as a kid, particularly in the newly emerging market of action figures. I had the Lone Ranger and Tonto action figures along with Silver and Scout. I also had a pop-up book that detailed the origin portion of the film. Well, on to the film proper. Despite the film being some 30-odd years old, consider yourself spoiler-warned. To the film's credit, you can feel they were going for the epic origin feel that Donner's Superman had a few years earlier. The story begins with the meeting of John Reed, the Lone Ranger, and Tonto as children. In a new twist, Tonto brings John to his reservation after his parents are killed by outlaws. Soon his brother Dan, a Texas Ranger, comes for him. Dan sends him to Detroit to live with family, where he grows to become a lawyer. John returns to Texas and during a thrilling stagecoach chase finds a love interest in pretty Amy Stryker, played by Wannon Clay. Stryker, by the way, was the name of Fran Stryker, one of the original writers of the old series. Amy eventually takes over her uncle's newspaper business after he's lynched by Cavendish's mob. Dan's son is mentioned, John's nephew. Longtime fans will recognize him as the father of the Lone Ranger creator George W. Trendle's other hero, the Green Hornet. Dan makes John a Texas Ranger, and soon we have the familiar story of the Texas Rangers being betrayed by one of their own and ambushed by Butch Cavendish and his gang. The Lone Ranger to survive is John Reed, who is discovered by Tonto and is nursed back to health. He decides to stay dead and avenge the Rangers as a masked man. Tonto decides to fight by his side since, in another new addition to the lore, his wife and child were killed by outlaws. Here, Butch Cavendish is played excellently by Christopher Lloyd. He's portrayed as a disgraced military major with grand ambitions of capturing President Grant, played by Jason Robards, and forcing him to sign Texas over to him. This is quite a departure from the simple outlaw he'd been in past incarnations, but it works. Despite Lloyd being best remembered as Doc Brown, I've always enjoyed his work as villains the most, and it's safe to say his portrayal of Cavendish elevates the character from mediocrity. This film marked the first time the Ranger's actual face could be seen unmasked before he became the Lone Ranger. Though in the TV series he often disguised himself, he was never seen unmasked. Clinton Spilsbury does well enough as the masked man. He was famously dubbed by James Keach, brother of Stacy Keach. I'm not sure if it was due to his voice being not deep enough, or perhaps poor line readings. Producers apparently went with an unknown in Spilsbury in a move similar to Donner's Christopher Reeve casting as Superman. But this turned out to be Spilsbury's first, last, and only film credit. The film also has a small role for John Hart as Lucas Stryker. Hart played the Lone Ranger for one season during a contract dispute with Clayton Moore. Western fans would probably recognize Matt Clark as corrupt Sheriff Wyatt. He played in countless westerns through the years, but would probably be best remembered these days as Chester the bartender in Back to the Future 3. Wannon Clay, who plays Amy, had only a few notable credits, such as an appearance on TV's Buck Rogers and a role in the film War Games. Tragically, she passed on at the age of 45 of a disputed illness. Michael Horse, nee Henrich, plays Tonto. He doesn't use the broken English dialect of Jay Silverheel's Tonto, which had fallen into political correctness even by the 70s. They don't wallow in the tense relations between Indian and white man. The closest they come is when Tonto explains his reasons for taking John to the reservation to heal. Tonto explains he has more than enough reasons to hate the white man, and if John betrays his trust, he will kill him himself. But every man must be judged by his own character. The film does a pretty good job of giving an epic feel to the Ranger's origin. This is truly The Lone Ranger Begins. They lovingly cover all the familiar aspects of Ranger mythology, how he found Silver, and his somewhat lengthy first attempt at riding him, Tonto advising him to use silver bullets for greater accuracy, and Tonto dubbing him Kimosabe. The only thing not touched on is the use of his dead brother's vest to make the mask he will wear for the rest of his life. That's a pretty important one to overlook. After pledging to fight for justice at his brother's grave, the Ranger's theme kicks in. The William Tell overture is used to grand effect in no less than 4 places, counting the closing credits. So at least they didn't skimp on it. Once the origin is over, you would expect the real fun to begin, but the last act sort of meanders for the next 20 minutes or so. The Ranger politely questions Collins, the traitorous Ranger, for a few moments before he gets assassinated. Tonto is inexplicably arrested for the crime and is about to be lynched by an angry mob until the Ranger breezes by to save him. They could have come up with some much better action set pieces to showcase the Ranger and Tonto in action. One gets the sense that the Ranger trained for a shootout or brawl that never comes. I expected to see him as a man of action, breaking down doors or smashing through windows, but the film makes us settle for a lot less. The Ranger disguises himself as a priest and checks in on Amy and cautions her against speaking out too loudly against Cavendish before leaving her with a silver bullet, the Ranger's trademark. It's refreshing looking back at a simpler time when the hero's secret identity was still respected. Had the film been made these days, she'd have found out his secret in the first act. Here it's handled much more subtly. Still, since the Ranger never had a love interest in prior incarnations, she's left with little more than a cameo in the film's second half. Maybe they were saving her for a sequel that never came, but her storyline feels woefully unresolved. Next, Tonto and the Ranger infiltrate Cavendish's stronghold to find President Grant and plant dynamite to cover their escape, which is aided by the arrival of the U.S. cavalry led by General Custer, Buffalo Bill Cody, and Wild Bill Hickok. During the melee, the Ranger chases down Butch and dukes it out in an old-fashioned fistfight, which results in a largely satisfying conclusion. President Grant asks how we can repay the pair, to which Tonto replies, "Honor the treaties with my people." Grant replies earnestly, "We will try." The Lone Ranger and Tonto ride off to the President wondering, who is that masked man? Country singer Merle Haggard provides the theme song, "The Man in the Mask," and some rhymed narration during the course of the film. I suppose it works depending on your appreciation of old Western balladeering. If that's not your thing, you could be reaching for the moonshine early and often. The film is somewhat slow-moving at points, and some of the action is fairly underwhelming in the last act, I suppose, but it does justice to the characters, certainly more so than the 2013 film. Overall, I enjoyed it a lot. If you haven't seen it before, give it a chance. I give Legend of the Lone Ranger 4 out of 5 stars. This is Johnnie Torch reminding you, keep the flame burning brightly, and I'll be with you again real soon. Get 'em up, Scout!